If you're looking to add a streaming feature into your Bubble app, then this is the tutorial for you. And no, at this point, I'm not referring to a streaming service like Netflix. Instead, I'm referring to the user experience created in something like ChatGPT. So traditionally, when you type a message to it and you connect to an API from an AI service, it usually sends all of the information back in one big blob. So it just suddenly appears in front of your user. Well, with streaming, what you can do is create a much nicer user experience where it starts delivering all of the information bit by bit. So essentially your users just aren't going to be waiting for the end result. Look, there is a little bit involved within this process. So what I'm going to do is hand this one over to Luca and he's going to walk through absolutely everything you need to know.
Hello everyone. Today we're going to be integrating streaming into our Bubble application using the completions API from ChatGPT. So if you've integrated ChatGPT before into a Bubble application, it would look something like this. You say, hi there, something like that. And then it suddenly just kind of appears and you have to wait, and it's not very entertaining for your users. But as you can see with the streaming engaged, it actually types out the response as the API call comes in from OpenAI. Let me do another demonstration. Write me a long poem about English weather. Now you can see exactly what streaming is a bit simpler. And yeah, it's just a lot better for the users. They don't have to wait. They can see the start of the response and continue reading as it comes in. And it just makes applications a lot better. So how do we actually integrate this into our Bubble application? We will actually be building out the full application here where we start chat and we'll build out this UI as well. So as you can see, very broadly, we've got our repeating group here with our different types of messages, our input box, a button, and then another repeating group with our chats, and then a new chat button. So if we quickly add a new page, and then we'll just call this chat stream, hit create. First thing we'll do is click on the page and set the layout to column. Next, we will add our first group, which will be our chats group here. And then we're gonna drop a repeating group into that group. And then instead of the text that we used for the new chat here, I'm gonna actually this time do a button because I feel like that will probably be slightly easier and more easily seen by users. So I'm just going to center that on the page. I'm going to center this on the page as well. I'll keep the all this kind of the same, except what I do want to do is drag in some text and then we'll center that, as well as on the layout, on the container alignment, centering it as well. This is not actually linked to anything in the database, so what you're going to want to do is go and create a new type, call that chat, hit create, and then just add one field and then write name. So that will be the chat name field. I'm going to go ahead and delete that because I've already got one here. As you can see, yeah, I've got chat. And the other thing you'll want to do is the list of messages. So to add a list of messages first, we'll actually need to create messages. So if we type in new type messages, create a new field. This is actually going to be the message. And then we're going to need to put JSON in here as well, which is also type text. And then once you've created the messages, you can then go into the chat, create a new field, call the messages, and grab your messages. Make sure you click this field is a list, so you want you can have multiple messages within each chat, and then hit create, and then you should be all set up there. Now that's actually all we're going to need to do for the basic database for this application. And we can go back to the design tab, and then we can actually choose for this repeating group, which is going to be the list of our chats. We can choose chat, and then the data source we can do is do a search for chats with no constraints. Now we'll just get all the chats within our database. Now you can obviously have a list of chats within the user field, and then each user can have a list of chats if you're doing a more complex application, but just for the tutorial we'll keep it simple. So I'm going to click on our chats group, and I'm going to click make it fit width so it doesn't take up the whole page, and then I'll probably go minimum width 300, and then I'm going to uncheck make it fit width, and then I'm going to add some padding onto the button to just add a little bit more space, and then also uncheck make that fit width. Now what I want to do is I want to actually be able to have as many chats displayed here as possible. So in the number of rows we have here, we have currently 4. I'm just going to uncheck that and then type 0 here, and as you can see that's made us be able to have a lot more. But what we want to actually do is go to the layout tab and then uncheck fit height to content. And just because it looks a little bit cramped in here, I'm just going to add some padding, some margin to the top and bottom of our text here, which we can then go into and insert some dynamic data, and we can call it current cells chat name. Let's go into our button here and then make it say create new chat, and then we're looking pretty good. Obviously you could make that look a lot nicer by adding different groups, different shades, etc, make it bold when you hover over it, but just for now we're going to keep it like that. So now let's drag our messaging group in here. We can name it messaging, and actually we want our chat whole screen to be a row, not a column, so that they stack next to each other. I'm just going to find our messaging group here. I'm going to click next, so it's on the right hand side just because I like the way it looks, and then I'm going to go ahead and then for the vertical alignment I'm going to do vertically stretched here. So now let's add our repeating group in here, uncheck fit width to content and fit height to content, and then let's actually populate this group. So in this group what we're going to have is our message and also the response from ChatGPT. So if we grab our group here, this first group we can do is the user. Let's make sure we name that. And then what we're going to want to have in this is our text, which is going to be the message that we send. And for our user group, I'm just going to add 10 pixels of rounding, background style, flat color, and then I'll just go to black and then do 10 opacity, which is a good way to get uniform types of grey. So we're going to keep this as user because it's the message we're sending. The content, again, we're going to do the multi-line input A's value, and the history we're going to set to our chat, so the messaging groups chat, messages, each item's JSON. And that's why, because we didn't actually add that JSON field, that will be empty, and then we'll have a fresh start here. Once that's done, we're going to want to create the response. So if we create a new thing, that new thing is going to be a message. Message create is going to be empty, so we're going to get rid of that. The message is going to be the result of the completion streams full text, so what the AI said. And yeah, the JSON we are going to want to input. So if we go back to our reference here and grab our message here, and then we can paste that in and get rid of that. So the role of this one is going to be our assistant. So yeah, we've got role assistant here. And then what we're going to do here, we're going to do content, insert, and then what we're going to do here is going to be the result of step 3's completions full text. Perfect. Again, we're going to want to add that to the chat. So I'm just going to copy this one, paste that in. So that's the result step 1. It's going to be perfect. So we're nearly there. One thing we do want to do is we actually have forgotten to add in the data for our streaming piece of text. So if we click here, we can display data in a pop-up group. That group we picked was the chat. The data we want to display is our chat completion streaming, and then we're going to leave that there, and that should go blue. One thing, just from a user perspective, we probably want to do is reset the input. So if we reset relevant inputs at this point, now because this will be nothing, we're going to want to go into our message and then choose the message for the content here. And then after all of this has been done, we do want to re-update our message here. So then the next circle, time it comes back round, the history is updated. So basically this message does have JSON. So after we've created the ChatGPT message, what we can do is we can make changes to a thing. That thing can be step 1's message. We can add that JSON in. I'll just copy this here and then we'll paste it in. Instead of assistant, because we're updating our first message, it's going to be user again. The content is going to be step 1's message. And now our history should be fully updated nicely. So before we actually test our application, what we need to do is actually configure this functionality here. So if we add a workflow onto our button here, we want to create a new thing. That thing is going to be a chat. We're going to want to actually create a message as well, which is going to be our developer message, which is where you'll be able to actually set the behavior of the GPT within the conversation. So we don't need to worry about creator or message or any of that for this one. We just want to actually add in JSON. And what we're going to do is copy this one here because it's actually exactly what we need. It's a developer message. And then go back to our bubble application. Paste it in, and I am just going to leave it as a helpful assistant, but you could say like be sarcastic or be very professional or be really unprofessional and jokey, or when you receive this thing, tell them this or whatever, just the context for the actual GPT. But I'm just going to leave it like that. I'm just going to actually move this to before we create the chat, because then we can add that message in. Perfect. And then we actually are going to want to set the state of our group. So if we type in set, you can see we can set the state of an element, and it was our messaging group that actually has that chat. And then the chat we're going to set is the one we just created in step 2. Now again, we're going to want to do another workflow, because when our user kind of goes to this list here, we'll be able to flick between different chats. So we're going to add another workflow. We're going to want to set the state of an element, group messages, chat, and this time it's going to be the current sales chat. Now, I'm going to go back here, because when we make the chat, we want to maybe just set the name to current chat, or let's set the name to just new chat. And for example, once the first message has been sent, you could do a second completions call that just asks ChatGPT to give you the title of a chat based on the first message, and then update the actual chat, which is what ChatGPT does. But we're just going to call it a new chat for this one. And now let's go ahead and preview our application. Here we go. So these are some previous chats, but I'm just going to click create a new chat here. And now it should have updated our group. I'm just going to say hi. Let's do step by step. So we create a new message, make a change to the chat. Okay. I think I see a problem here. So first of all, let's go to our messaging group here, and I actually want to hide it. I don't want to collapse when it's hidden, but I only want this to be visible when the messaging group's chat is not empty. So if we haven't selected a chat, then we actually won't see the ability to be able to type into that chat. We're going to want to click this as well, and let's get our messages back here, and let's make sure that we can see a lot of messages. So if we delete min height, so once we've turned that to 0, we can go into the appearance, fixed number of rows, uncheck that, and then make the min height of each row 0. And that should give us more messages per thing. I'm going to get rid of the borders and the outline as well. And then let's move to our workflows here. So when we're sending the message, we're going to make changes to the chat. And that is going to be parameterized to chat. Okay. All right, so let's have another look here. Okay, now we're not seeing our input form, so let's just check. So the group here, we didn't click make it visible, so that might help. So let's check again. A lot of building stuff with Bubble is obviously fixing bugs. So create new chat. Lovely. Now we're pasting into this chat. If I say hi, let's do step by step. Create a new message from the current user. We added that to the chat. Completion score happens, but then nothing happens. First of all, let's get our messages to ourselves showing up. So if we go to here, when the current message creator is the current user, again, we did it, make it visible. Let's try that again. Create a new chat, say hi. So a mild success, we've got our group. The actual text is not showing up though. Parents use message. Hello. Lovely. So we have our message now, and okay, so we're having issues with the actual API call. It's kind of taking a long time, not going through. So the reason for that is because even though we're making sure this doesn't have any history at the moment, and then we're updating it after we do the call, it's still actually passing the JSON, and it's like an empty thing, and it just messes up all our code. So what we're going to do is in our actual API call here, we're going to do all the messages, and then we're going to filter it by JSON, and then isn't empty. So it has to have history to be included in the history that we send to ChatGPT. And then each item's JSON here. And that should mean that the call will go through successfully. So let's again run it, say hi, got a hi there, and we've got hello, how can we help you today? But it didn't stream, so let's double check our streaming here. So if we go to our group, we want to make sure we're picking completion streaming, And the reason for the lack of streaming is actually because in our workflows, when we're updating that group, we're updating it with what's already there, and what we're basically doing is we're updating a group with something that's already in the group, but there's nothing in the group. So double checking everything. If you actually go in and click this, it's not going to work because we've gone too far down, like the data tree essentially, because this is expecting the whole payload. And so if we go back to our backend and just all we need to do is delete that until we have the whole payload, then it should go green. And then we've got this here, which is the completion streaming, and then we've got our text pulling that text so far from there. A new chat, write me a long poem, hit enter. Amazing. Now we have our streaming enabled. Now I'm gonna go into our repeating group here and sort our chat by creation date, descending, yes, and that should order them. Create a new chat, say now they come up perfectly, one after another. We've got our streaming working. Oh, the end. So we're going to want to make the creation date no. And then let's push that and see if it lines up better. Ask it to write a short story. And then they line up much better for us. Lovely jubbly. And then let's check, we've got history. Amazing. So I've just done a quick test, and as you can see, we have our history and streaming set up in a chat app that is fully functional. So I hope you've enjoyed that tutorial. Obviously, I think streaming is just a much better way of introducing the responses from OpenAI API into your applications. And yeah, let me know what other AI builds you want next. Cheers.
And just like that, you now know how to create a streaming feature inside of your Bubble app. If you found this video useful and you wanted to stay up to date with any additional resources we share, I'd always recommend hitting that subscribe button on our channel, so that way you can be the first to know whenever we drop a new tutorial. For now though, I just want to say a massive thank you for taking the time to watch this specific video, and I wish you all of the best on your own no-code journey.